Welcome back to The Explainer, everyone. I'm thrilled to be your guide today on behalf of Forge College. So if you've been following along in our track on transitioning from EVM to SVM, you just wrapped up the lesson on measuring your transaction costs. You did the hard work, but let's be real, right now you're probably staring at this giant, frankly terrifying spreadsheet full of normalized data, variance indicators, and cost metrics, just scratching your head wondering, what do I actually do with all this? If that's you, don't worry, you are definitely not alone.
It's a totally natural reaction. What on earth do we actually do with these numbers? And listen, we have to be super careful here, because this is exactly where the classic developer trap just springs shut. You know the one. You look at a wall of data, panic a little bit, and decide to, well, vaguely optimize things that don't really matter. It's like spending 3 whole days tweaking a tiny logging string, all while a massive nested loop is just silently burning down your entire server budget in the background. Yeah, we're going to avoid that trap entirely today.
So, before we start tearing down our code base, let's just quickly look at today's blueprint. We're going to go from data to action, map out our signals to solutions, look at a real-world marketplace example, build an optimization workflow, and finally, prepare the handoff. Let's get right into it.
All right, part 1, from data to action, looking at our raw materials.
You see, those numbers from our previous measurement pass, they aren't just random data. They are concrete signals showing exactly where our app is bleeding resources. And that means we need an optimization hypothesis. Seriously, I want you to banish the phrase, just optimize the code, bro, from your vocabulary right now. It just doesn't work. Vague advice is literally the enemy of efficiency here. What we actually need is a specific, testable plan. Something that translates a measured signal into a clearly defined mechanism for cost reduction. Like, if your compute is too high, you can't just say, make it faster. You have to say, okay, let's replace this O of n squared loop with an O of n log n approach to cut compute units for large inputs. See the difference? That is actually actionable.
Moving on to Section 2, Mapping Signals to Solutions. This is our translation engine.
This is where we convert those abstract spreadsheet signals into structural solutions. Let's break down this truth table. Say your measured signal is high per transaction compute. Basically, your transaction is just choking on math. Your candidate optimization there? Algorithmic redesign. The mechanism is super simple. You just reduce the total instruction count. But what if your signal shows a massive amount of storage reads instead? Well, that's an I/O-bound hotspot. The solution isn't better math, it's structural. You need to cache values or compact your data layout to actively reduce those input-output operations. And finally, if your measurements are flagging multiple signature verifications per transaction, your go-to move is aggregating those signatures. That reduces the raw number of crypto operations. It's like a giant puzzle, right? Every single signal has a specific logical countermove.
Okay, Section 3, the marketplace example. Let's see this blueprint in action. Let's dive into a real-world scenario to see how these EVM versus SVM trade-offs actually affect your architectural decisions in a decentralized marketplace. Imagine we measured this marketplace and found 2 dominant problem transactions. First up, order placement. This one is heavily I/O bound. It's suffering from massive storage rent bloat and high account creation costs simply because every single new order creates new persistent state. Now, contrast that with order settlement. Order settlement doesn't use much storage at all, but it's incredibly compute bound. It's basically choking on the mathematical limits of the blockchain because of these heavy on-chain matching loops and endless signature checks. So we have 2 completely different bottlenecks, which means we need 2 completely different tools to fix them.
Let's tackle that compute-bound order settlement first. Our main enemies here are those bloated O of n loops, or honestly worse, O of n squared loops that just iterate over every single active order on chain. I mean, it's an absolute disaster for your compute budget. So what's the play? Well, we could replace those loops with index lookups. Or even better, what if we just move the heavy matching logic to off-chain matching engines entirely? Then, the on-chain program just processes a really succinct settlement proof. We could even introduce tiered settlement paths for smaller trades. The fundamental mechanism we're using here is brilliant. We are actively turning expensive on-chain computation into much cheaper verify-only steps. We aren't doing the heavy math anymore. We're literally just checking the math.
Okay, but what about the sheer terror of out-of-control storage rent on the order placement side? Because it's an I/O bottleneck, we actually need to alter our data structure. We could aggregate multiple orders into a single compact account, classic denormalization. We could recycle order slots instead of creating brand new accounts every single time. Or we could even store ephemeral orders off-chain and just keep lightweight pointers on-chain. The underlying mechanism here is that we are aggressively reducing per-order storage rent and read operations. Now, of course, there are trade-offs. Denormalization might complicate your concurrency, and off-chain pointers definitely weaken atomic guarantees. But hey, that's engineering for you, right? We weigh those trade-offs based on our precise measurement data.
All right, moving into Section 4, the optimization workflow. Time to hit the assembly line.
So we have all these great ideas, but how do we actually prioritize these fixes without, accidentally breaking our entire application in the process? We need an assembly line. Here's a really solid 3-step triage process. Step 1, score priority. You calculate this by looking at 3 things: the impact of the issue, the reproducibility, like, does this happen consistently or is there high variance, and the remediation cost. This simple little formula is a lifesaver. It stops you from embarking on some massive 6-month deep architectural refactor when a simple batching trick could have saved you 40% on compute right out of the gate. Once you've got a high priority target, step 2 is writing a recommendation card. And finally, step 3 is designing a targeted experiment.
Let's zoom in on step 2 for a second. The blueprint of that recommendation card. It needs a really crisp, 1-sentence problem statement, your proposed change, and the expected impact direction. But crucially, and I can't stress this enough, it requires concrete numerical inputs. You cannot just hand this to a stakeholder and say, hey, we have some big arrays. They'll laugh you out of the room. You need to say, our median array length is 12, with a tail distribution hitting 200. Why? Because algorithmic improvements behave drastically differently across that distribution. Those concrete inputs, totally non-negotiable.
Which brings us to Section 5, preparing the handoff. Let's talk about the final output.
We've officially reached the end of our engineering assembly line, and it's time to package up our prioritized fixes for the absolute next phase of development. The crucial point here is the makeup of your final handoff document. It absolutely must include your ranked priority list, the outcomes of your targeted experiments, your exact operation level counts, and those input distribution statistics we just talked about. Listen, this document is your shield. It is literally the single thing that prevents all that vague guesswork and those endless, exhausting debates during the final Solana cost modeling phase.
Before we wrap up, I really want you to adopt a new engineering axiom. Ready? Translate measurement signals into explicit optimization mechanisms, not vague advice. It's that simple. Evidence-backed, highly specific plans are always going to win over abstract wish lists, every single time. If you map the signal to a mechanism, prioritize smartly, and provide the hard numerical inputs, you are absolutely going to succeed.
So the ultimate question remains, are your Web3 architecture assumptions actually surviving contact with the Solana cost model? If you follow the workflow we laid out today, you'll be bringing prioritized, fully measured candidates right into our next lesson on compute unit basics. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today. On behalf of Forge College, I really encourage you to visit forge.college to dive even deeper into Web3 optimization and a bunch of other great topics. Keep measuring, keep optimizing, and I'll see you in the next one.